Welcome everybody to today's webinar to Root's product showcase. This is our first of its kind, and we're quite excited about this. So in today's showcase, we'll be going through two things. So one is the impact of software developers in the insurance space and for insurance businesses and our experience with that. And then the other one is showcasing Workbench, our toolkit that we've been putting together for developers and innovators and people who are shipping modern embedded insurance products. So just before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to Charlotte. Charlotte's our Chief Operating Officer here at Root, and she'll be joining the presentation today as well.
Thanks for the intro, Louw, and welcome everyone to the webinar. It's really cool to see how many people have joined, and also I'm really looking forward to Louw's demo and presentation. Just a few things to make sure you guys get the most out of the webinar. You'll see at the bottom right, there's a chat. Some people are already in there chatting. Feel free to chat away, but please make sure you do post your questions in the questions tab. The team is on standby monitoring all of the questions coming in, and we'll be answering some of them live. We'll also be getting to them at the end of the webinar, so please do post them. And then just one other thing is, please put your setting on full screen mode. There is a bit of detail that comes up, and you might want it to be a bit bigger. So that's it on the housekeeping side, and I'm just going to give it back to Louw so he can kick off.
Cool. Thank you, Charlotte. So jumping straight in, I think let's start with Root itself. So as many of you know, I think most people in this call are somewhat familiar with Root, and if not, a quick overview. So what Root is all about is we're all about making it as easy as possible for companies to build, then launch, and then manage digital insurance products in the modern age. So we see ourselves as building an operating system, and we see ourselves as powering people that take innovation and R&D seriously to try and keep up with modern customer demands and requirements. So we essentially see ourselves as we're building blocks. This operating system is a set of building blocks, and it's all about empowering people who care about focusing their resources and their effort on customer experience, go-to-market, and distribution of their products. And that's where we focus a lot on. In our time doing this at Root, as many of you know as well, we've partnered quite closely with a broad range of companies in the insurance space. So everything from innovative startups in the space like OneSpark, all the way through to larger enterprise businesses like a Mr. Price or the Fushini Group, who are leveraging their large customer base to offer, call it more relevant, personalized, and appropriate insurance products to their customers. So those are the type of things that we see. But in that process, one thing that has become increasingly clear for us, and was also incidentally one of our hypotheses when we started out Root a few years ago, and that is that software sets any business apart. And that's essentially that not only software developers are vital in organizations that care about innovation and being on the leading edge, but also that the toolkit they use matter quite a lot to actually empower them and actually enable them or set them free to live out their or to leverage the skill set that they bring to the party. So what we've seen, and I'll give you a bit of an overview of the story of what we see most insurance companies or businesses rather go through in the market. And now we've seen this now across many regions. So it's not just in South Africa, it's in the UK, we've seen it in the Middle East, we've also seen it in the US as well play out. And that is that businesses they always start with either buying or inheriting some legacy insurance system or core platform that they use, or they've ended up building their own system, a very bespoke system that's geared specifically for the product that they're selling in the market. So let's say it's a company selling pet insurance, they might have ended up building a very specific product or policy administration system or tech platform that caters only for their product. And what this means is they're pretty much shoehorned or stuck with that specific line of business or that specific type of product that they're selling. And to go anything beyond that or to iterate on the customer experience beyond that becomes quite difficult. So what we've seen is flowing from that, or the ripple effects, is essentially that the developers they've got involved, whether it's on their payroll, whether it's contracted developers that helps them build, these people constantly get stuck maintaining utility. So they get stuck building on the core system instead of focusing their energy on the customer facing or experiences or the go-to-market side of things. I tend to say see that there's like 80-20 principle at play here, and 80% of efforts are spent keeping just the machine running or keeping the lights on. And then as a side effect of this, or result of this, is differentiation then starts getting outsourced. So businesses then start going, cool, they can't move, they can't innovate, they can't move forward, and they start leaning on external companies to take over building what sets this business apart. Now, the reality is the business itself, in almost every single case, is the only organization that truly knows the customers, that truly cares, and that truly feels the pain and knows they need to solve or which problems to solve to create value out there. So if you outsource that, you're essentially sitting in a position where someone else takes care of it. They don't know, they don't always actually care. And then also it flows into number 3 on the screen here, which when it's in an external organization's environment, you often get stuck in their development queues. And this actually happens, I think, almost always. It's like a norm in the industry or the status quo. And we've seen it take often easy about 3 months to just make a small change in policy wording, for example. And that's not even to say that if you want to add a benefit to a product, or you want to change some rule or some underwriting criteria to kind of give that experience to your customers. It's often a lot faster for companies to change their own app, to change their own website, because they've got full control. But then the moment they want to add that to their product, it pretty much gets stuck. Both time-wise and cost-wise, it often gets stuck there. And this is quite frankly just not good enough for any business that's trying to innovate and try to be on the leading edge of the insurance game. So this is our observation of the current state of insurance. And this brings me to what we think matters, and that is that businesses should be focusing on building differentiation and outsourcing utility. This means they should try and get in a position where 80% of their energy goes towards building what makes them unique and what actually addresses their customers' problem, and then pretty much call it outsource or get utility providers or infrastructure providers to take care of the rest. And you'll see this with players like, with tools like AWS, Amazon's web services, where companies used to take care of that and then realized over time that it's much easier to just let someone like Amazon handle it so they can focus on the app they build on AWS. And I think in insurance, it's now a layer further than that. There's a layer on top of AWS where people can outsource utility. That being said, it's not any utility. It needs to be the right utility that enables a business to actually innovate and do the cool things. I'm not sure if you've come across Twilio before as a company. So Twilio is quite a prominent tech or API first business. They, in the unicorn status, billions of dollars valuation, they essentially package telecommunications behind APIs. And Jeff Lawson is quite the founder of Twilio. He's quite a thought leader in the space of how software is eating the world and how software is disrupting businesses and industries as a whole. And a quote that he said that stuck with me is, anything that is customer facing, you should build, because you can't buy differentiation, you can only build it. And that's just something to take away. Someone should focus the little bit of effort and resources and capacity and capability they have on the stuff that sets them apart, as opposed to stuff that just makes them look the same as everybody else. Okay, that brings me to Workbench today for the showcase and what we're going to do, what we're going to show you today. So Root has a few components to it, one being the APIs in the front to integrate and embed products. And then Workbench comes in on the side where you build and launch and then manage these modern digital products on our platform. So Workbench is the toolkit, it's the building blocks, it's the things you use to configure and set up and change and iterate on products in the market. It essentially comprises of a few things. The primary ones would be pricing engine, documents like your policy schedule, terms, PDF documents, all the things that you kind of want to generate for a customer. IPIDs or all of those things. Workflows, so these are your quoting workflows, your policy amendments, alterations, or midterm adjustments, those type of workflows. Claims workflows, what details and documents to capture during the claims process. All of those things you build in Workbench itself. And also things like lifecycle rules, waiting periods, lapsing rules, premium collection rules, cancellation rules, and quite a few other things you can configure and set up in Workbench. You'll see now shortly, it's a combination of low code. We've got full code flexibility in what we call a Turing complete environment, so you can literally do anything. And then some of it is also just configuration files that makes it a bit easier and more constrained for what you can do with it. Cool. So then into the demo itself, what we'll be doing in the demo today is I'll show you how easy or seamless it is to create a product on Root from scratch, and then how to make changes to that product on typical examples that we've seen in the industry and with our clients. So what I want you to do today is imagine for yourself that we are a new business called PetX, and we're going to be selling pet insurance, both direct to consumer, but then also through make it available over API. So other businesses like veterinary chains or other retail businesses can embed and sell that product through their customer journeys and channels as well. So before I jump over PetX, keep that in mind. That's what we're going to be building here. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the Root dashboard. So this is the portal or the window into the Root machine itself. It's not yet Workbench. This is just where you get started. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is we need to create, you'll see I'm on an empty screen. We need to create our organization called PetX. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up for us so we can get started. First thing is it asks for a organization details. Let's call ourselves PetX. And then to make it easy for someone to get started, there's also a whole bunch of template products that you can choose from. And this list is evolving and growing. And the nice thing about these templates are they're pre-set up with all the rules and configurations that's pretty much needed to go to be a production-ready product. So all you need to do is basically skin it and white label it. And then you can build on top of that from there. So I'm going to use pet insurance. We're going to call ourselves the product. We're going to just call PetX. And I need to give it a key as well. So I'll just call it PetX as well. That. Continue. At this point, the Root platform's provisioning an organization. It's creating that product for us and setting all of it up in sandbox mode. So it's a safe space for us to play around. Okay, you'll see we're here in the dashboard. Also for context, this is where staff members and people in the organization can access Root. So this is not for clients, but this is where your claims assessors or call center agents will access the platform. See policies, claims, payments, and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm going to go into the Workbench section, open up product, and then I just want to create a draft URL quickly, or a URL to open this product and show you what it looks like to issue a policy of this new template product. So it's all very generic and very stock standard. Okay, so you'll see I've opened up a new tab from that link that's automatically generated. This is a link that you can then embed into your customer journey. Typically, people would consume the APIs to build their own complete custom journey, but this is just a quick start to get started very fast option. So I'll just quickly take you through the flow to show what it looks like to issue a policy on this on the starter template of ours. Cool. So the first question is the cover option. I'll just go for standard. Then it asks us for the species, so dog or cat. It's a pretty simple pet insurance product. What year was our dog born? It asks us a few other questions. What is the category risk? So it's a high risk and the doggo was sterilized. You'll see it generates a premium in real time, which is pretty cool. So this interface passes the data to the APIs. The APIs does the pricing and does all the math and passes the premium back. And you can also in real time just change fields and you'll see it generates new quotes on the fly. So if it's not sterilized, it's 54 quid. If it's sterilized, it's 51.30. So let's go with this one. Sign up. Now it's going to ask me a bunch of details on myself. So I'm just going to not be myself for a moment. I'm going to be Sarah Smith and type in just a bunch of details on Sarah, like her date of birth and a whole bunch of other things. These are not needed for pricing now because it's a pet insurance product, but often it is actually included. And then I'll use my email address just so I can show you how everything downstream works from here. Number. And then I'm going to skip the step of adding an address for now. So I'm just going to proceed to fill in our doggo's details. So this doggo of ours, it's a white Labrador, and his name is Bob. I'm going to type in Bob. It's a Labrador, a white one as such, and Bob is a male doggo. Okay, this is the last step before issuing a policy in this, call it starter template format. So you'll see it gives us a summary, gives us the cover amount, and it asks us to just confirm details and add some banking details. So this is set currently to direct debit or debit order equivalent payment method for now, but you can also do credit cards and Stripe payments and a whole bunch of other things that you can configure in the Workbench environment. So I'll just type in some sandbox data. Debit day and then account type. So we go pay now, and that was it. So policy has been issued, and you'll see it gives you some details on where to claim. And if I open my email right now, I've got some filters set. If we just give it a moment, we will shortly see that email arrive in my inbox. Let me just check. There we go. So here's our new policy. Dear Sarah, policy has been issued. And then if I go through, I can also show you the documents. So it's got a blank terms document. So we'll definitely need to fix that just in a bit. And then we also, it attaches a schedule as well that you'll see here. Still your logo here, still the generic thing. And you'll see it gives a bit of policy details, cover details, like the start date and the monthly premium. These are now all the things that one needs to go change and make your own.
Look, just a quick one here for, I think, everyone's benefits. Just a recap of what just happened. Louw essentially kind of bootstrapped a product build together with a policy issuing flow, and then actually just issued a policy to kind of test if it'll work. So what we've done is gone pretty much 0 to 1 with very generic thing product. And I guess from PetX's side, Louw, the next step would be ready to make this product our own. Can you maybe show us some of the things that we needed to do that?
Yes, I think let's jump into actually just adding our first bit of skinning to it. So this would be the first step to make this interface and this part of the journey a bit more PetX friendly. And then we take it from there. So what I have prepared is I've got a background image and a few colors that I want to add here. So the first thing before we do that is we need to set up Workbench on my computer so we can get started to edit the product itself. So to do that, I'm going to go over to Root. I'm going to go into Settings, and I'm going to API keys to generate an API key for my Workbench to use. I'll just create one quickly. Let's get the all-still sandbox, and I'll copy this key. And then I'm going to go over to my code editor on the side here. This is VS Code, it's Microsoft code editor. Any code editor works, so it's quite nice in that sense. But the nice thing is I'll show you the structure of a product right now, and then you'll see how seamlessly everything fits together. So to get started on this, I'm going to use the command rp clone. I'll paste that API key I just used, and then I'll type the product key in there as well. You'll see this is the key that we used when we started the product there. PetX is the type key of the product. So if I click enter here, what this now does is my computer basically takes, or the Workbench tool takes that product module, copies it onto my local machine, creates a folder, copies all the files from the product module onto my computer, and then allows me to edit them locally. And then I can use this tool to quite easily push the changes back up to Root for it to take effect there. So it's kind of like the same way that Git or GitHub works. So many actuaries or product people are familiar with that process where you do git push and git pull to get your code up and down. It works pretty much exactly the same as that. So you'll see it ran successfully. It cloned PetX into a folder called PetX. So I'm just going to open that quickly for us, and then we can take it from there. Okay. Okay, here you'll see the code editor. I opened it now. And you'll see a bunch of files and folders on the left-hand side here that got cloned into this folder of ours. See, as a config file, code, documents, workflows, those things I mentioned earlier. You can actually see them play out here. Now, the first thing we want to do, like I mentioned, is we actually want to change this interface to just match our new PetX brand and theme for our new business. So I'm going to go ahead and go into, in Workbench, I'm going to go into workflows. I'm going to embed config, and I'm just going to look for the things that matter here, which would be the background images and then the colors, and I'll just swap them out to a few links and things I've got pre-recorded. So all of these things are quite well documented in the docs as well. So these are just config settings that describes how that interface specifically looks and works. So I'm going to go down to colors. You'll see there's a range of color settings. And I'll just copy our primary and our highlight color to show you how quickly it is to make changes like this on a product. So highlight, and that's it. So save. And I think actually while I'm at it, before I push this up, I'll actually just quickly show you how to, I'll actually add our logo to the document as well. Yeah, so let me just go into see documents. There's a whole range of documents here that you can edit. I'll just go into the policy schedule. That's the one you saw earlier with your logo here. I'll go down to where it defines the logo. Here you'll see is the URL that points to our logo, or the wrong logo, and I'll copy ours into that file as well. This is just to add our PetX taste to this product so long. The pricing and stuff's obviously not yet up to date, but that's fine for now. So I'm going to go RP push. Let's use the force flag. And this now takes all of these changes I made and it pushes it all up to the root platform. And you'll see there, it pushed it up successfully and it created a draft version 2.2. So there's version control and stuff built in. So it makes it safe for developers to kind of make changes quite frequently and easily and test the results and the impact of what they're doing before having to commit to it. So we've pushed it up. I'm back on this user-facing flow here, and I'm just going to click refresh, and we should see all our changes at play. Cool. There we go.
That definitely looks like PetX to me.
It's Bob.
Awesome. That's really great. No, I guess one thing that you mentioned earlier, which is about those changes you made are quite small changes. It's really sort of aesthetic and branding things, more material things that you wanted to change in the product. We often hear you mentioned developer queues. People get stuck trying to make quick changes that they want to test in the market. They get stuck in queues with their vendors. So say, for example, we've just had new data. There's been an increase in dog nappings in a certain area, and we're keen to test a search and rescue benefit. So we now have to phone and ask for that benefit to be added, or how does that work?
Cool. So in this case, the whole point is that developers or people at the organization building the product have full control over that. So they don't have to block on phoning anybody. They can actually just do these changes themselves. I think let's take a stab at adding search and rescue to this product as a benefit. Let's say it's like £5 a month extra fee, and we make it optional so a customer can opt in. So if I'm just on this flow again, you'll see all these questions that it asked: cover option, species, birth year, all of those things. I think let's add a checkbox at the bottom here that allows a person to choose whether they want the search and rescue benefit for the dog nappings. So this config, I'm going to go over to the workbench. I'm going to go back into workflows, and I'm going to go into the quote schema this time. So this is a construct called schemas, and you'll see a bunch of things here that looks familiar. You'll see cover option, you'll see species, you'll see a bunch of things that you also see here on the interface: cover option, species, and a bunch of other places. So we obviously want to add a checkbox, and I'll need to reference the docs to actually know how to do a checkbox. So I'm going to go through the Roots Developer Hub. This is the place where we have all the API references. We've got all the building blocks documented, and also some tutorials that kind of give you getting started instructions and a bit of help to kind of get off the ground. So I'm going to go through the guides. I'm going to go to the schema section, and I'm going to go to the schema component reference. This is where I'm going to look for my checkbox component. So if you look here on the right-hand side, you'll see a whole list of components that's available, selects and numbers and currencies and things. We obviously want to get a checkbox. So you'll see here's our checkbox. This is how checkbox schema looks. So this makes it quite easy for someone to kind of do things that they weren't able to or haven't done before. You just like look for it in the docs, start by copy pasting, push it up and see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, go into the schema, back in the workbench, just scroll to the bottom, and then I'll just add this, literally just paste it in, as simple as that. Let's call it search and rescue. And then let's just change the text that the customer should see. Do you want search and rescue or an extra £5 a month. Cool. So this is now a checkbox. And then if I push these changes up again, you'll automatically see that checkbox appear there. So let's just wait for this to push up, wait for the green. There we go. Version 2.3 is now, draft version 2.3 is live. So if I refresh this page and we scroll down, you'll see our checkbox has now been added. So this is just the first step. We've now added it into the workflow, but obviously our pricing engine still needs to account for that, and we still need to pull this £5 into our premium if the checkbox has been selected. So I'm going to do that one next. I'm going to actually show you how to edit your pricing engine and how to add more benefits onto a policy itself. So for that, we're going to go over to the code side of things. And this is the only real side where code itself happens, but this is where all the call it power of the whole machine lives. I'm going to go into the quote hook and show you two things. The first one I'll show you is the validation part of building your product. So validation is essentially specifying what data is allowed inside the platform. So what data is allowed to come in through the API. And then the second step would be to actually calculate the premium. So in the validation step, you'll see here, this is this function you're looking at here. You'll see there's species. It only allows dog and cat. You'll see cover option is only standard or premium. So you can this is where you can iterate and change those things. So what we want to do is we want to add search. Yes.
One question, just while you were doing this, reminds me sort of, this is, I guess, the part where data becomes quite important, and actually talking to external systems, whether it's a government database or somewhere else where we need to ingest some data to actually impact our pricing and have dynamic pricing. Is this where you would do it? And can you maybe just show us quickly, how you would do that if you can?
Yes, I'll do that in a second. So let me just add the search and rescue, and then I'll get to that step as well. So because maybe I'll talk you through the structure of the quoting. So search and rescue has been added as an input parameter. And then if I get into the quote step itself, this is now where all of that data comes in. So you're talking about dynamic pricing. So if we add search and rescue, this is essentially what happens here. You calculate the pet's age based on the input data. You take the birth year, you calculate the age, then you use the species to determine whether it should use the dog rate or the cat rate, and then within that you use the age and the breed risk to calculate that. So that means you could quite easily, and we're already busy adding search and rescue, but you can also add other fields here to do other types of lookups or structure the data otherwise as well. And then you can store all of that on the policy as well. So you've got the rate, you've got the discount that's getting applied because of the sterilization benefit, determines the sum assured, and then it calculates the premium. So here it takes the sum assured, times it by the rate, and applies the discount as well. Now for the search and rescue, we just want to add £5. So I'm going to keep it at that, and I'll show you. Sorry, you basically want to say if search and rescue is enabled, then we want to increase our premium. So we're going to go premium must be the current premium plus £5. Now, an important thing to note here is that the premium numbers on Root are always in cents or pence. So in this case, I just need to add 2 zeros to make that equal to £5. So now it says if search and rescue is true, add that to the premium, and we're good to go. You'll see a few other things happen here, but you don't have to stress about that. Mostly it works out of the box, and you can tweak it if you want to change the structure and all of those things of your data. So cool. So now I'm going to add this and actually push it to the platform. Again, I'm pushing it up, so we wait for the green marker. And then I'll show you how that's at play. So you've got, you'll see version 2.4 has been published. So going back to the dashboard and update, just refreshing this page to make sure the latest one loads, I'll quickly show you how that premium now takes effect. So we go for standard option. We're going to do the same one. We're just going to redo Bob, our Labrador, high risk, sterilized, which you'll see is 51.30. And then if I check this checkbox, it should automatically add another £5 quid to that. So now you'll see it's 56 quid, 30 as well. So this is how easy it is then to add pricing or another benefit essentially from a pricing point of view to your product. One thing we haven't touched though, that still remains, is we can go ahead and issue this policy. The premium is there, the benefit will be logged on a policy, but it's not yet in a document. So it's not yet in the policy schedule where we also want to track that this person's got this benefit. So to do that, I'm going to go over to documents. I'm going to go over to our policy schedule, the one we had earlier. And I'm just going to add it to the bottom of the table. So if you remember from the previous thing, it had all those gray rows in the table. I'm just going to add one at the bottom that's called search and rescue benefits. So search and rescue.
Louw, while you're busy with this, just confirming that, there's quite a few steps involved in actually adding this search and rescue benefit. Sort of you have to change a number of places. Lastly, the docs, or firstly. Is that all kind of detailed in the guides and the API docs? How do people know if they've missed a step?
That's a good question. Pretty much everything is documented. So I'll just jump over to that to give you an example. If I go over to policy documents, the one I'm busy with now, updating the schedule, you'll see that's it explains in details, in quite a lot of detail, how to build dynamic templates and all the tools you can do or use in this. It says it's built in HTML. You can use handlebars. And here it explains what each part of it does. So this is pretty much the intention, or our goal is always that someone would be able to use this without having to ask for help, even though we're always available to help. But this is so that someone can get started from scratch and kind of learn and adopt the things themselves as well. So I've added the search and rescue benefit now as another row. I'm just going to save this before we push it up. And then one more change I just want to introduce. You remember the empty PDF doc we had, the white one, the blank one? I've also just asked the team to create us a nice, sleek-looking PetX terms and conditions doc that we also want to add to this product. So this is actually a change we very often see clients make because of compliance changes or regulatory changes. They need to change the policy documents on a product, and those changes shouldn't be hard. It should be quite easy and fast to do that. So in this case, all we do is we just drag and drop that in, replace the old one, and then we do an RP push again to the platform. That's pretty much it. So we've updated the schedule, we've updated the terms. It's just pushing it up, and then I'll show you how that looks. Cool. We'll see version 2.5. Let's go. So back here, I'll just continue with Bob. Enter more details. This time I'm just going to be John Smith. So this is where we're just going to issue another policy with pretty much the same details so that we can compare and just see what the impact is of that new benefit in the documents that we've added. Just say John is born in 1990. Use my email address again. And I'll use my number again. Cool. Okay, so I'm just going to do this for Bob again. Labrador, white, male. See the summary. You'll also see all the branding kicking in now, all the orange, all the PetX theming. That's all from the changes we did in the beginning. The sandbox bank details.
Does it need to be a bank debit, or can it be? Yeah.
No, this could be. You have to set it up in Workbench, so you can configure what it needs to be and tailor it to what your specific offering is. It also supports credit cards and a bunch of other stuff like that. We found the most powerful one is Stripe, because Stripe unlocks they've got a whole menu of types of payment methods and collection methods you can use. That's quite useful. And also it varies. So subscription products are typically debit orders or direct debit. Once-off products are typically credit card. If it's not embedded, if it's not part of the other purchasing journey that a customer is going through. And for that, there's APIs that someone can use. Cool, so I've issued the policy here now again, and I'm just gonna jump straight into the dashboard to actually show you how this new policy looks and how that plays out. So here you'll see the John Smith policy. See it over here. I'm just gonna open that on the dashboard, and here you'll see all the parameters that's stored on the policy. You'll see suddenly we have search and rescue, which is set to yes. We'll also see the other things we had, like pet breed and breed risk and all of those things. And then if I go to documents on the policy here at the bottom, I can show you how our policy changes kicked in already. So we've got our terms, which is, wait, did I actually push that one up? I think I missed that one. I might have not. I actually issued this policy on the wrong one. Caught myself on that one. I should have refreshed the page when I did this. Didn't do that. I'll just quickly run through this. Another policy for Bob. Well, Bob's definitely going to be overinsured by the time we're done with this. Cool. So I still issued that policy on the previous version of the product.
So it's just a matter of refreshing the browser.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I forgot to click the refresh button. But it's all fine. It's in Sandbox, which isn't a safe playground where you can do this type of stuff and make mistakes and play around. There's also a testing suite I'm not going to show today that's built in that allows you to kind of build in automated tests into your product that automatically runs when you want to deploy, or when you run the test suite. It checks your pricing logic being correct. It checks a whole bunch of other stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, so physical address, Bobo, cool. And then we just go for the bank details again. Take account. Okay, this time it should take effect. Let's hope. Okay, that's how quickly you can issue a policy. It's also scary. So if you go through, you'll see Nick's policy. That's the latest one, the third one I've just issued, and that would have been on the latest version of the product module now. Again, we'll see our search and rescue. And if I just scroll down all the way to the documents, this time we should see our terms document. Here we go. You'll see PETEX, terms and conditions. And we'll also see our schedule, which I think is the important one, where we added our benefit into the pricing, into the doc itself. Here you see the search and rescue component that was added in. So that's a reminder, refresh your page. Cool, so that is what it takes to add a benefit, a basic benefit to a product. We've also seen and often do much more complex things like that, where there's like sub-benefits or different structures you want to track on a product, and those things are possible. And it's once a person's got a grip on these basic things, those things become quite a lot easier to kind of build on and to use the building blocks for your product. One thing I'm just thinking that I can also show you is, and I see there's questions.
There's quite a few questions about payments, Louw. I'm not sure if you want to just talk about external payments, how that works. I guess it talks to the integration side of things, maybe even sort of external data sources. I mean, it's kind of...
Yeah. So I'll touch on that. I think that's one question I very often get on Workbench itself, or Root's capabilities rather, is can you consume external data and can you leverage that in your pricing engine? The short answer in that is yes. And I actually want to show what that looks like and how easy it is to actually talk to external systems. Now, opening Workbench back up, I'm just going to go into the quote section. And to give you examples of what people do here often, and I don't know the exact distribution, but many of our clients use it this way, where they would have an external pricing engine. So perhaps it's their reinsurer has some advanced pricing engine that's got an API, or they already have an insurance pricing engine internally. Or it might be that they need to leverage external data, like some database lookup, some risk tables or external risk system that they need to reference. Those things, and doing that on, or how to do that on Root is quite straightforward. So you obviously make sure you capture the right details through the API that you want to use. And let's say in this case, we want to do for pet insurance, we want to solve for the catnapping. We want to understand the risk profile of where the customer is staying. So we would need to make sure that we capture the area code as an input parameter. So let's say that comes into the system. Then you can very quickly just write a bunch of code here that does, like if search and rescue is true, so instead of adding just 5 quid as a standard premium, you could also do something like talk to an external API. So you just go, you can go response equals await, and then you use the fetch library. That's just a standard JavaScript tool set that exists, and you can talk to that external system. So let's say there's some API, petriscdatabase.com, for example, /dogs, because it's, or whatever the API is, and you need to pass it a bunch of parameters. It's a post request, and you want to pass it the data through. So the data here would be the area code that we've got at the top, and you also maybe want to pass it the species, whether it's a dog or a cat. And in this case, when this code runs, when this get quote function runs, this thing would make the API call, literally this piece of code. And here you can go const rate would be something like, I'm kind of shorthanded now, but it's something like response dot rate, and then you can say premium plus the rate. Save, and if I push that up, this thing would now speak to this hypothetical external database. So this is how you can consume external data from Root in the pricing engine. So you can either externalize everything, so just pass everything that comes into this external system, or you can talk to multiple systems, pull that data in, and construct your premium on the fly. And then you can store that information on the policy as well if you return it in this module object. So that's pretty much an example of how that works. And then to answer your question on, I see also someone asking the chatter, a question on payment. So on Root, essentially the way we think about things, or we design things, is that every function you can do, there's APIs for. So if you're looking at a dashboard like this and you see policies, there's an API for that to fetch policies. There's an API to issue a new policy. There's an API to get quotes, to fetch documents, to do all of those things. And one of them would be the payments. So if I go into the documentation, you'll see there's a whole payment section here that talks about how you can use, integrate your own payment system. So this is often with the larger retailer clients, they would run their own credit systems, or just the credit businesses. We have a few of those clients as well, where they do premium collections on their own systems, and then they just want to keep Root in sync about the payments and what happened there. For that, you've used the APIs that exists here. Configure a bunch of rules, and then you can use the APIs to do that. We also have a few managed services like credit cards, Stripe, or debit orders as well, that you can leverage on Root to kind of just move faster and unblock as well.
Thanks, Louw. I guess we're in the Q&A part of the thing now, so I'm going to throw a few more at you, if that's okay.
Cool. Go for it.
So I think another question that's come up in the chat is about sort of, customization and also skill level required to actually kind of do those customizations. So I guess maybe if you can talk a little bit to how flexible is the platform really is, like what can you do, what are the limits, and how skilled do you need to be able to get that done?
Cool. So yeah, there's also a question that comes up often, and I would almost tie that question into the topic around like no code versus low code and configuration versus writing code. Our finding so far has been that it's essentially that something like a no-code tool. Think of drag and drop. A drag and drop editor allows someone to maybe move a bit faster and might be a bit easier to get started. But the problem is those things are always like severely constrained in terms of what it can do, because you can only do as many permutations as what a drag and drop thing can do, and that ends up blocking people downstream. So early on in the buying process, they go, cool, this thing looks super easy, it's super fast, and then they might try it, but by the time they actually try and solve their specific unique product that sets them apart, they get stuck. So that we've seen time and again. So the reason I'm raising that is that little bit of code that someone needs to write is worth, or in my perspective, is worth training and learning and leveling up on, because it unlocks like infinite amount of like stuff you can do with it. Now, to answer your question on if someone like the skill level you need, what we found is if someone's got skills writing something like Excel macros, or even advanced Excel formulas, or often actuaries know how to write Python or R, those type of coding languages. To get started on Root, those things kind of set you up quite well. And then from there, you obviously can play around and learn the rest of the building blocks and kind of develop the skill from there. So I don't think you definitely don't need to be like a heavy software developer to use this. It might help, but it's not a requirement.
So even though Root's dev first and we design our tooling around developers and sort of optimize for them, it doesn't mean you have to be a software developer to be able to actually use the tools and get going.
Yeah, just need to embrace software itself. Yes.
Right. There's an interesting question that's come in from Ricardo. He's asking whether A/B testing is possible.
That is a good question. Thank you, Ricardo, for raising that question. That's a good one. Yes, the short answer is yes there, but you have to kind of build it in yourself. So Root doesn't allow you to like toggle between product versions like that, but you can quite easily pass in that type of parameters into your coding function, or into your quote function itself. So you could literally go, let's say you have an A/B test flag that you pass in, and the A/B test flag would be, let's say, true or false, whether you want to do A or B. And then using that, you can change your premium. You can literally write the function that says if A/B test equals true, then like apply change the premium, whatever that would be, and then if it's false, do the other thing that you want to do. So this way you can almost like implement your own A/B testing. You can even do broader than that type of testing in your product. So sometimes you want to like change the premium, sometimes you want to change the benefits that get presented, or just the underwriting criteria as well. So that's just to show you how that would look.
And probably an important point here is that because our tooling is externally facing, you can kind of run these A/B tests quite quickly on your own, whereas you don't have to wait for someone else to implement those changes for you to actually run the tests, which is, I guess, quite a big benefit.
That's the key thing.
Cool. One more question, which is not in the list, hasn't been asked, but we do get asked a lot, so I think it's a pretty good one to maybe cover. We're also running on time. We've got a few minutes left. Is the question of embedded insurance. Embedded is quite a hot topic, keyword. So it might be just worthwhile going through a little bit, what does that mean relative to what you've just shown us? How does one embed this? Is it possible?
Yes. Yeah, that's so trying to think of a nice way to explain this. An important part about Root is that when you're building a product in Workbench, so the thing we just built, this like PetX product that we built and deployed, is API ready from the get-go. So the fact that it's on Root means there's APIs for it, and means you can integrate this into any channel from there. So I can show you an example. I'm just in the API references in our developer hub. You can go to, let's say, quotes and like to create a quote endpoint. Now, the quote endpoint is always the same for all products. It's only the payload that changes, the content inside of it that changes. I just want to see. And the content is essentially these fields that you describe in your validation. So that means that if you've built a product, you've deployed it, literally what we did now, this product is now ready to be embedded. So you can now talk to external third parties and get them to plug this into their channels. You can just point them to the documentation. So you don't need to build any APIs yourself. You can just point them to Root's documentation. And you can also plug this into like other like bundled products where the premium collection and stuff falls part of the other product. We've got quite a few clients that does that with airtime and cellular type bundles, where they would give the customer extra, whether it's device insurance or life insurance, like funeral cover. part of the product. So you don't need to do anything new. The fact that the product is loaded makes it embeddable already.
So digital is really the thing. If it's digital distribution, kind of we can do it. Whether it's embedded or not doesn't matter.
Yeah. And the key thing is you don't have to do anything extra. It's there by default.
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
Louw, there's maybe one other topic,
Yes.
unless you wanted to. Did you want to show something else or?
No, I think we can move towards the wrap up.
Yeah, great. Wrap up. Let's do it.
Cool. Have you got one more question you want to ask? I think we've got 5 more minutes.
Maybe just it might be useful. This all looks very nice. It's an out-the-box insurance product, but we all know there's no such thing as an out-the-box insurance product because you need underwriters in the back and all the nice things that aren't shiny and front-facing. So, maybe just for someone who's just getting started in insurance, what does that look like and what role would Root play in that part of the game?
Unfortunately, that's not a setting you can set in a Workbench. Not yet, at least. If you give us a bit more time, we might get there. So essentially, if you've built a product on Root, you can build a fully, call it launch-ready product, but you still need an underwriting insurer or carrier to actually sign off on all the compliance requirements and actually back the risk of the product. Now, in terms of people using Workbench, often it's insurance companies themselves using it, and then them and their compliance teams are involved. Or it's someone who partners with an insurance company. They would build a product and then they would go to the insurance company to kind of sign it off and back the product. We actually have cases where reinsurance partners are also involved in building products that they then take to the front of the value chain to get sold or embedded and sold. What we do in cases where someone comes to us where they want to sell a product and they want to embed it, they've got an opportunity, we typically would lean on our partners for that. So we've been building and continues to build relationships with insurance companies and reinsurance companies that are there to kind of carry the risk and participate. So if someone comes to us and they say, hey, we actually want to embed pet insurance, we like this big veterinary chain, we'll point them in the direction of one of our existing partners and hook them up so that they can get that product live.
Thanks, Louw. I think that's useful piece of data to know. I think we have 4 minutes, so I think it's time for a wrap up.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. So just to kind of wrap it up and to recap the key things from the session or the key messages that I think is important to take home here is the following 3 things. One is that software sets any business apart. Building differentiation matters. Outsource your utility and your infrastructure, and then invest in the best tooling for your team to actually set them up to leverage their skills and be able to innovate and focus on their customers. These are the 3 key things for us. And also the 3 key things we always kind of advise and speak to clients about or partners in the market to not compromise on. So just to add to this, if any of you were keen on reading further on the value or how to approach leveraging software in a modern business, I personally found this book by Jeff Lawson from Twilio, the guy quoted earlier, quite useful. The book's name is Ask Your Developer, How to Harness the Power of Software Developers and Win in the 21st Century. Very good book, goes into the detail of how to think about software, in your business, and how to then leverage that to build differentiation. If you're a software person in a team, this is also a useful book to give your boss for them to kind of wake up to the importance of this in their business. So yeah, that's all from my side. I think we already went through the Q&A. So thank you everybody for joining the session this afternoon, for listening into our product showcase. It was really cool to show you all what we've been up to, what we've been building. If you have any questions on this or want to get access, if you're already a client, speak to your customer success manager or email me. And if you're not, then feel free to email me or email anybody in our team as well to ask questions. We're also happy to give you access to the platform if you just want to play and mess around. We're always excited to see what people build and what they can come up with on our platform. It's ultimately why we're here. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.